Okay, so last Thursday, I think, last time we did notes, we talked about standard form. We talked about standard form, okay, of a quadratic. So standard form looked like this. Had an A, had a B, had a C. Okay, and then we looked at the different things and we graphed them. We found axis of symmetry. We found the vertex. We found the y-intercept. Is it arrows going up or arrows going down, right? We did all that. Today we're going to do the same thing, but for two different forms. Two different forms. One called vertex form, and one is called dirt form. Okay? They all have texes. They all have axis of symmetry. They all have maximum minimums. They all have y-intercepts. Okay? The reason there's different forms is because they look different. First thing you look at, vertex form doesn't have the B and C. It has an A. Okay? We know what A does, right? A is A controls skinny or wide, and arrows up or arrows down. Right? We talked about that. A is still the same. So A is not anything new. A is just the same as what we did last week. But now we don't have an B and a C. First thing I have is an H and a K instead for vertex form. Okay. For factor form, or sometimes called intercept form, it has a P and a Q. Okay. So what do those things do? How do we deal with them? That's what we're doing today. But in the end, all our pictures are going to look the same. Either it's going to be arrows up or arrows down. Some of them will be wide, some of them will be skinny, some of our parabolas will, So that's essentially so the same. We're doing essentially the same thing, but just our questions are going to look a little different. So the first thing you have to decide is it standard form, text form, or factor form? Which one is the three is it? And then go from there. Okay. So vertex form. The thing about vertex form is that the vertex is built in. The vertex is already there. You don't have to do any work. Last week, when we wanted vertex, we had to do A and B to get to the vertex. We had to do some work, right? This, for vertex form, we don't have to do any work. It's already there. H comma K. H comma K. H is the axis of symmetry. Okay. Maximum and minimum is always the y coordinate of the vertex. Okay. All right. So we don't have to do a lot of the work that we had to do last week. It's a little easier. Okay. It definitely has its parts, but it's not as bad as last week when we had to use the formula. Here is a little different. So instead, for factored form, we got P's and Q's. P's and Q's. Now the x-intercepts. What's another name for x-intercepts? What's another name? Instead of x-intercepts, sometimes they're called, does anyone remember what they're called besides x-intercepts? Sometimes they're called x-intercepts, sometimes they're called what? Does anyone remember what they're called? One name started with an R. One name started with a Z. One name started with an S. Roots is one. What were the others? What was the S word or the Z word? The Z word was zeros, and the S word was solutions. They're all the same. We've never found those using standard form. We didn't find those using standard form. With intercept form or factored form, we will be able to find those. Okay? Same thing with axis of symmetry. Cross out some of that stuff here. So this should be like this. Watch, there's a typo. So cross that out, and it should be like this. Axis of symmetry equals P plus Q divided by 2. That's what it should be. No comma x equals or x or comma 0. Okay. Also on the back, you have this. Just cross that out on the back. on this thing here. That's just, it got printed extra when it didn't need to be printed, so you can cross that out too. Okay, we're gonna, it's the same thing as the bottom of the first page. Okay. So axis of symmetry, how do we find axis of symmetry? It's a halfway point between P and Q. So wherever P is, wherever Q is, find the halfway point. So another way to say that is add them up and divide by 2. That's the halfway point. Where am I? Where did I start? Where did I finish? Add them up, divide by 2, you're in the middle. That's the way to find the middle. The maximum and the minimum are always the y coordinate of the vertex. Okay? All right, so that's that. Remember A has the same role. That's the nice thing. A is always A. A always controls skinny wide, arrows up, arrows down. Okay? Arrows down means we have a maximum. Arrows up means we have a minimum. Can't have both. Quadratics don't have both. They only have one or the other. So if you have arrows going down, that means the maximum is on top. If you have arrows going up, that means the minimum's going on the bottom. Okay? All right, so let's look at the first one. Let's look at number 1. Example number 1. So our first question, the most important question, is which form is it? Is it in standard form, where there's an A, B, C? Is it in vertex form, where there's an A, H, and K? Or is it in factored form, where there's an A, P, and Q? Right? So which form, there's a couple things that give it away. Which form is this in? Which of the 3 is this in? That guy right there. Which of the 3 is it in? I'd say vertex form, yeah, vertex form. A couple things that give it away. First of all, there's only one set of parentheses, right? Standard form did not have parentheses. Standard form did not have parentheses, right? Didn't have parentheses. Factored form does have parentheses, but there's 2 parentheses. And the other thing that gives it away is the squared next to the parentheses. Okay? Okay, so it is vertex form. I agree, vertex form. So that's the first thing. Vertex form. So now we're going to follow the steps of vertex form. So there has to be an A, there has to be a P, or sorry, there has to be an H, there has to be a Q, not Q, there has to be an A, there has to be an H, and there has to be a K. So first of all, what's A equal to? What is the value of A? -3. It's got an H. Be careful when you're doing H. The reason I say be careful is because when you think of H, what number do you think should be H? What number when you look at H, when you look at where H is, right? H is right here. What number do you think? Oh, it should be what? -2, right? -2. There's a minus in front. It should be -2. It's actually not -2, and I'm going to tell you why. So look at this form here. The minus is already there. The minus was already there to begin with. So what number did they plug in here to make the -2? Yeah, they plugged in H. So this minus was already here. So H is not -2, it's actually +2. Okay? So H is a liar. H lies. So I'm gonna write this in the front. H lies. It's actually the opposite sign. Exactly, yeah. Opposite sign. K tells the truth. K tells the truth. So whatever K has in front, that's what it is. Okay? So H lies. It's actually not a negative if it's got a minus sign. So yeah, exactly. Just like Bruno just said. If this was +2, H would be -2. Okay? So just be careful there. H lies, K tells the truth. So K is -4 because there was a -4. Okay. All right. Okay. A, B, and C are done. So now let's go to axis of symmetry. Okay. So let's go to our notes. Our notes say axis of symmetry for vertex form is always just going to be H. Whatever you got for H, that's going to be we just have to put it as a equation. Okay. So the value of H was 2. So it's going to be X equals 2. That's our axis of symmetry. Okay. Vertex. Well, our notes say that the vertex is always H comma K. H comma K. All right. Well, I got, what did I get? 2 for H, -4 for K. That's my vertex. That's why they call it vertex form, because there's not a lot of work to do. It's there. It's right in front of you. You just have to pick it out. Okay. All right. So let me draw the picture. So we have the green line at +2. The mirror line, right? Anything that happens to the right happens also on the left. So if I have a dot on the right side, there's also going to be dot on the left side. That's the first thing. That's the axis of symmetry. The next thing is the vertex. 2 to the right, -4 down. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So the next thing after that was maximum minimum. So which one is this one going to be? Is it going to be a maximum or is it going to be a minimum? We have enough, there's enough information to tell. Which one do you think it's going to be? Minimum. Minimum because what? So A is negative, right? So if A is negative, it's going to look like this. So that means this one will have a maximum. This one will have a maximum. It's going to be arrows down. Okay? It's going to be arrows facing down. So that's how I know if it's going to be a minimum or maximum. So this guy right here is going to be a max at the minimum / maximum are always the y coordinate of the vertex. That's K. So whatever K is -4. Max at -4. Okay. Next thing is the y-intercept. The y-intercept always starts with what? What does the y-intercept always start with? 0. Yeah, it's not a y-intercept unless it starts with 0. X is 0. We have to figure out what y is. So to find the y-intercept, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in 0 everywhere I see x in the original. So everywhere I see x up here, I'm going to plug in a 0. I only see an x right there. So it's going to look like this. Y equals -3, 0, -2 squared, -4. Okay. PEMDAS says do parentheses first. So let me do parentheses first. So parentheses means I get -2 on the inside. Okay, I got -2 in there. Exponents. Exponents means I got to square first. -2 times itself. What's -2 times -2? +4, yep. So multiply. When I multiply here, I get -12 minus 4, -16. 0, -16. That's the y-intercept. That's off my graph. But if I had it, it would be like right about like somewhere like here. So it would look like that. Remember, the green line reflects, so whatever happens on one side is going to happen on the other. So that means there would be a blue dot here too. Okay, done. So what do you notice about the parabola? What do you notice about the parabola here? It's got arrows down, but what else about it? Does it look looks a little skinny? Does that make sense? That it's a little skinnier than others? If A is -3, I'm going away from 0. So it's going to stretch a little bit. It's going to get a little skinny. Okay. All right, now let's look at example number 2. Example number 2. Okay. So number 2, it's in vertex form. I have the parentheses, one set of parentheses squared. That's the giveaway there. Okay. So A, H, K. So what is A going to be here? What's A going to be for this guy? Mm-hmm. 1/4. It's fraction. H. What is H going to be? -5. H lies. H is a liar. So make sure it's -5, and then K tells the truth. +2. Okay. So A is negative or is positive, right? A is positive, so it should be arrows up. What else about A though? What else do we know besides arrows up? What does that 1/4 tell me? It's going to be what? What does that 1/4 tell me? Compared to the one you just did. Compared to this guy here. It's going to be arrows up, but it's also going to be skinny or wide. Skinny or wider. So this guy was pretty skinny, right? Because it was -3. -3 is over here. +1/4. Are we getting closer to 0, or am I getting farther away from 0? Closer. So as I get closer to 0, it's going to widen. It's going to be wider. Okay, arrows down, or sorry, arrows up and wide. All right, so here we go. Axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is always H. So whatever H is, -5. So let me go make that mirror, that green line. Okay. All right. Next one is vertex. Vertex. is h comma k, h comma k. So -5, +2. So is this one going to have a maximum or is it going to have a minimum? Is it going to be arrows going up or arrows going down? I think we said it a little earlier. Is this one going to be a maximum or minimum? Minimum. This one's going to be arrows up. So that means we have a minimum value. We have a minimum at +2. Because it always goes with the y. Always, always, always goes with the y. Okay. Next thing, y-intercept. Y-intercept. Y-intercept always starts with 0. So everywhere I see a 0 in the original guy over here, in the original, everywhere I see an x, I'm going to plug in a 0. So we have y equals 1/4 0 plus 5 squared plus 2. Okay. We do parentheses first. Parentheses first, I get 5. Then I do exponents. 1/4 times 25. Okay. Then I do multiplication. What's 1/4 times 25? How do I do 1/4 times 25? There's a couple different ways to do 1/4 times 25. You can change 1/4 to a decimal, 0.25, or you can multiply straight across. Probably the easier way is just to change this to 25/1. Then you multiply straight across and you get 25/4. 25 divided by 4. 25 divided by 4 is 6.25. 8.25. Okay, go make a dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A little bit higher. Going to do the same thing on the other side because it mirrors. It mirrors on the other side. So I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away from the line. So I got to go 5 away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My dot's going to be right there. Okay. I'm done. Okay. So we did the same exact things. If you looked at the notes from Thursday, we did the same exact things. Axis of symmetry, vertex, minimum, maximum, y-intercept, graph the picture. We did the same thing. This is just with a different form. That's it. On a test or a quiz, I'm not going to say you have to use this form. You have to use standard form. You're going to use whatever form's easiest for you. Whatever form is easiest. You don't have to always use the same thing. Okay? All right. Okay. Now let's go to number 3. Number 3. First thing, which form is it in? Which of the 3 forms is this in? Exactly. I would say factored or intercept. Yeah, what gives it away? What's the things that are kind of like 2 parentheses, right? This one's got 2 parentheses. It's the only one that has 2 parentheses. The other ones have either 1 parentheses or no parentheses. Okay, so it's factored form. So that means it's going to have an A, it's going to have a P, and it's going to have a Q. So what I want you to do right now is tell me what those values are. That's what we're going to do next. So write those down. Okay, so we got factored form. So we get A. What's A going to be? -1, good. What's P and what's Q? This is where we kind of get a little, kind of like with H, it's going to be the same thing. So here we're going to get a 1, here we're going to get a -5. These guys lie as well. Why do all of these guys lie? I'll tell you, I'll eventually tell you, we're not there yet, but I'll tell you why they all lie. There's a very good reason why they lie. Next part of the chapter, we'll get into that. Okay, probably next week. I'll tell you why. But just in your notes for right now, P and Q lie. So if they have minuses in front, they're actually positive. If they have positives in front, they're actually minuses. So those guys are important because those are the x-intercepts or the roots. 1, 0 and -5, 0. 1, 0 and -5, 0. Okay, those are dots. So the first thing we're going to do is actually not even find the axis of symmetry. We're going to go make those dots. So let's go make a dot at 1, 0. That's right 1, up 0, left 5, -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 dots. Okay. Now we can go to axis of symmetry. So what does it say for axis of symmetry? How do we find axis of symmetry with factored form? What does it say in the front? What does it say in the front? Halfway between P and Q. So if you can see it with your eyes, where's halfway? It's like -2. That works. If you don't, sometimes you're like, I don't know where halfway is. How do I find halfway? I'll show you a trick. Use that. Add up P and Q and divide by 2. So P is 1, Q is -5, divide by 2. So if I add up 1 plus -5, I get -4. And I divide by 2, I get -2. That's the axis of symmetry. So sometimes you can see it visually. Sometimes you can't. So if you can't, use that. P plus Q divided by 2. Next thing is vertex. Vertex is always going to be start out with the axis of symmetry. It's always going to start out with the axis of symmetry. Doesn't matter which form. It'll always start out with the axis of symmetry. -2. In this case, it's -2. How do I find out the y? You're going to do what we did for standard form. How did I figure it out for standard form? How did I figure out the y for standard form?
How many seniors do you have? You don't need to have any seniors. Just one.
Last week, to figure out the vertex, we used the axis of symmetry and we plugged in everywhere I saw an x, right? That's what we're going to do today, if it's in factored form. Okay, if it's in factored form, I'm going to plug in a -2 everywhere I see an x. So it's -1. The original is right here. -1, parentheses, -2, -1, parentheses, -2, plus 5. Okay. Then do order of operations. Order of operations says if I have parentheses, do the parentheses. So we get -1. In here, I get -3 as parentheses. In here, I get +3 as parentheses. Multiply straight across. I get -1 times -3 is +3 times +3 is +9. That's where my vertex is. -2, +9. So I go make a dot. Okay. All right, next one is maximum minimum. Is this one going to have a maximum or is it going to have a minimum? Is it going to be arrows pointed down or arrows pointed up? Down, yeah, down. It's got a -a, and that's the only way to connect the dots, right? So it's going to have a maximum at +9. Okay, and then the last thing is the y-intercept before we actually just connect all the dots. Okay. So the y-intercept is always starts with x equals, or sorry, with x being 0. So the y-intercept, so I'm going to do the same thing, except instead of -2, this time I'm going to plug in 0. Plug in 0. Parentheses, inside the parentheses, I get the first one, I get a -1. The next one, I get a +5. Negative times negative times positive makes a +5. 0, +5. Make a dot there, reflect it, make a dot there, Now I have 5 dots. I've never had 5 dots before. Usually I've always had 2 or 3. Because I have more dots, it just makes it more accurate. The more dots you have, the more accurate the graph is. That's all. Okay. Then you're done. Okay. All right, last one. Last one, then we're done. It says example number 6. I don't know why it says example number 6. It should say example number 4. Don't know why. Okay. It's in factored form still, right? Today it's not that bad. The ones on the left side are vertex form. The ones on the right side are factored form. I did that on purpose because we're just learning it, so I want to keep them all, organized. But on assignments, tests, quizzes, they won't be that organized. They're going to kind of they'll give you random ones. They'll give you some in vertex form, some in standard form, some in factored form. So you got to be able to tell. Okay. So since it's in factored form, what is A going to be? 3. What's P going to be? Good, -5. And Q will be -9. Good. Okay, so we have our x-intercepts are at -5, 0 and -9, 0. So that's where we're going to start with our dots. Okay. Now we go to y-intercept. Or sorry, axis of symmetry first. Axis of symmetry. Now again, if you can see visually where the middle is, you don't need to do anything. Just where's the middle? Sometimes it's hard though. Sometimes the middle will be a decimal. It gets kind of confusing sometimes because sometimes the middle isn't so clear. If it's not clear, add up P plus Q and divide by 2. When I do that, I get -7. The same answer you probably got when you did it visually. Okay. Vertex. It's going to be -7, comma something. So I got to plug in the vertex, -7 back into the original. Okay. Parentheses first. So I get a -2 here. Oops. I get a +2 here. I had a 3 in the front. So when I multiply straight across, what do I get? 3 times 2 is -6 times another 2 is -12. Okay. Problem is -7 comma -12 is off my graph, but not too much. Not so much that I can't kind of estimate where it's going to be. So -7, if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, it'll be right about here. Okay. Is this guy going to have a maximum or minimum? Minimum. Good. Arrows are going to be going up. Minimum at -12. And the last thing is the y-intercept. Okay. The y-intercept always starts 0, comma, something. And then I'm going to plug in 0 to the original. And when you do that, you're going to get a crazy number. Three times 5. And then in here, you're going to get 9. And if you multiply straight across, you're going to get a number way off the graph. 3 times 5 is 15, times 9 is 135. Yep. That's way off the graph. So we're not going to be able to even estimate that because it's super off the graph. But we at least know where it is. Okay. The last thing is sketch the graph. You were done. Okay. So tomorrow we'll do some practice on that. And we'll go from there. Okay. All right. So if you're in the back, there should be tape behind you somewhere. A desk behind you, there should be tape. Once you're done with it, pass it forward to the person in front of you. There should be an extra tape back there. Yeah, grab that one.